Before we get started today, I want to make an announcement. Leaving the Theater is starting a movie club. Starting this Wednesday and on the first Wednesday of every month, me and an esteemed panel of guests will gather on Twitter Spaces. We'll discuss recent movies, television, and streaming series that we've loved, and what we're looking forward to in the month to come. This will be a time for folks to discuss the reviews we've done, defend their favorites, challenge my opinions, and more generally, share our love of film, television, and streaming properties. And you, yes you, listening right now, will have the chance to ask questions, share your opinion, and join in the discussion. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at OItsBigRon. That's at OHITSBIGRON for more information and the link to join us on Twitter Spaces. And that link is also included in our show notes as well. I hope you can join us. And with that, let's start the show. We head back to the mysterious Upside Down in Stranger Things Season 4. But this time, the gang is spread thin, dealing with a new monster in Hawkins, Indiana, teen bullying in Lenora, California, and a prison break in a Russian gulag. I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm on the couch. This is Ronald. All right, this is Ronald, and I am on the couch after watching Stranger Things Season 4, created by the Duffer brothers, starring Winona Ryder, David Harbour, Finn Wolfhard, Millie Bobby Brown, Gaten Matarazzo, Caleb McLaughlin, Natalia Dyer, Charlie Heaton, Caro Buono, Matthew Modine, Noah Schnapp, Sadie Sink, Joe Keery, Dacre Montgomery, Sean Astin, Paul Reiser, and many others. Now, Sean Astin isn't in this season, but he is a part of the cast. He's been in past seasons of the show. This was season 4. I'm going to try to do this with as few spoilers as possible, and also try to give as much explainer as possible for people who might be listening who have never actually watched the show. So Stranger Things is about a group of boys that live in a place called Hawkins, Indiana, and which is about 50 miles south of Indianapolis, I believe, in the show. I don't know if it actually exists. It could, but I'm not sure. It is created by the Duffer brothers, and it is set in the 80s, and it is this group of kids who kind of stumble onto another dimension, and they run into a friend who, due to experimentation, has superpowers, and together they all go on an adventure that is quite creepy and terrifying. I remember watching it the first time when I watched season 1. I remember watching the show and thinking, "Oh, these guys are going to go on an adventure. Oh no!" And then it got really, really creepy really fast. I'm not a person who watches scary movies at all, but I'm able to handle Stranger Things, and I think, just from a guy who is a scaredy cat, yeah, maybe watch it with the lights on if you are also a scaredy cat. But I don't think it's impossible to watch a show like this if you're like a little bit scared, because the creep factor is kind of undercut by the fact that, one, these are children going on an adventure, and two, they are actually trying to stop and or fight the monsters that they run into, which I think is, that kind of makes it a little less, just a little less horror and more adventure in that case. But there are some very creepy elements that belong to the show. When we get to season 4, we we've kind of watched these children go on a journey, and there's kind of like a new unfolding parts of the same journey as they go along, from season 1 to season 2, season 3, season 4. They're all connected. And by the time we get to season 4, we're kind of looking at all of these young people who are now not quite so young anymore. They're still young people, and let's not get it twisted, but they're not like children anymore. These are teenagers, these are young adults, and they've made friends along the way, and now these friends are all a part of the crew, which makes the casting and the kind of the blocking of the show and the grouping, if you will, of the show just a little bit more complex. And I think one thing that they did well in season 4, and I didn't think they were doing well until they kind of landed the plane, but they take a large cast. I mean, at some points you are tracking about 4 or 5 different groups of people doing seemingly unrelated things. And I remember early on in the season thinking, I don't get it. And as it continued, the creators begin to bring the people closer and closer and closer together until it actually begins to, make there's a lot of cohesion. There's a lot of synergy. There's a lot of, it makes sense. It clicks together like a puzzle eventually. So it became kind of worth it. After a while, even though it felt nonsensical at first, saying, I don't know how you're getting this wide cast to all come together. A lot of the ways, kind of how I feel about like any of the Avengers movies, especially when you get to like Infinity War and Endgame of the Marvel movies, you really get in there and you're like, there's so many characters. I don't know how they're going to execute this. And they do this by breaking people into groups, sending them on separate quests, and then bringing everybody together only for a limited time. And that's kind of what Stranger Things is doing here. And it ends up being well. Now, granted, at some point when watching the show, you realize that there's one group that is a little more important than the other groups. And I think that doesn't exactly undercut the importance of everyone else. But it certainly, I noticed it. I think the only way to say it is like, I'm sitting here watching, I'm like, man, I really don't care what these other people are doing, but they keep cutting to them like I should care, and I wish they would come up with a different way to do this. There is one episode in which one of the groups is not in it at all, which again makes sense because they're not contributing to the advancement of the plot. But by the time we get back to them, I'm sitting there watching and thinking, I don't know how we're going to include y'all in this show again, because it seems like we don't need you anymore, or the show doesn't need you. But as the show continues, it turns out that they are important, and it makes sense. I think that all of the kids, the child actors, are now all like young adult actors, teenage actors, or some of them are in their early 20s, some of them are in their late teens, some of them are in their mid 20s. And I think the core group of 4 boys, and I think that's Finn Wolfhard, Caleb McLaughlin, Gaten Matarazzo, and whoever is the guy that plays Will, and you really need to start keeping this. It's probably Charlie Heaton or Noah Schnapp or Joe Keery or Dacre Montgomery. It's one of them. Or none of them. I don't know. Some of y'all will probably fact check this and be like, Ronald, why did you? I get it. I should have known. I should have some sort of cheat sheet in front of me, but I don't, unfortunately. But yeah, it feels like for this season, I think one of the things that have always bothered me about Stranger Things is the core group of 4 actors. They have all progressed along well. And I think one thing that I noticed is that early on in the show, it was the 4 of these boys, and we were following them in seasons 1 and 2. We were following their adventures. Now it's not. We're not following their adventures anymore. They are spread out. They are separated for most of the show, or they're in groupings of 2, and they're doing stuff with other characters who all have lines and are important as they are. So it's no longer about this core group anymore, which I think is kind of giving the show some longevity because it's making me care about other characters. It's making me not so focused on these 4 boys and the fate, and it doesn't really put plot armor around them anymore. You really get the sense that anybody could die in this show. Now, contractually, that's probably not true. But watching it, I'm certainly seeing a sense of bringing in new characters and allowing them to advance the plot more in the show. Now, I will say one of the things that always have bothered me about Stranger Things is that early on in the show, or early on in every season, it's kind of like they restart everything, and they kind of make me like they rebuild all this conflict for the season, and it doesn't feel very the danger feels continuous, but the things happening around that are superfluous to the danger, like the relationships between the people and all that. It feels like they're just building them up in a way that, you know, I think is important to them. But when I think about the fact that the last two episodes, the last episode was episode 9, it was an hour and a half, and the episode 10 of this season was 2 hours and I want to say like 20 minutes. Something like that, which is long for what is considered to be one episode of television. That would be long for a movie. 2 hours and 20 minutes is a long time. I watched a feature-length film for the last episode. And I think if you're doing this much world building in episodes 1 and 2, where there's bullying and there's these characters and there's people struggling and all this stuff. And there was a lot of stuff that just really was not important to me at all. And it seems like there could have been either some right sizing of the season saying, all right, this season is just going to be 12 episodes. It's going to be 12 episodes. Or there was some cutting that could have absolutely been done here that there's scenes now that I'm thinking of that happened early on that were like emotionally resonant scenes that I care about. There's a character being bullied and trying to fight back and all of that. And that does not feel important to me at all. It's almost like the show then restarts. It says, hey, look at all these human relationships. And then by the time we get to episode 3, the show is kind of restarting saying, all right, no, seriously, forget all that. Let's get to the point. Here's the point of why all of this is happening. And the point is largely disconnected from the rest of the show. So if there's any drawbacks, that's the only one. Other than that, I think this is a great show. I can't wait for season 5. I think Stranger Things does a great job of building tension, giving us action adventure, and making you root for the characters. In the last episode, the 2 hour and 20 minute episode, I found myself on the edge of my seat, really rooting for everyone. I do this thing where sometimes when I see characters are in danger, I'll start praying for them, which is like kind of a reflective accent. A reflexive action that I probably need to stop because these are fictional characters. But I believe in the power of prayer. So they'll be there like, oh, Lord, help him, Lord. Lord, don't let him die, Lord. And I'm just, it's probably from my parents as well. I've watched my mom watch television and movies too. It's hard not to have that sort of empathetic connection to characters. So I know that they're doing a good job. I'm very excited to see what they do with season 5. I'm hoping that they just put us right into the fire in season 5 instead of kind of building the world and talking about relationships and their personal lives and all that stuff. Just let's, as Curtis says, as Curtis quoting Steve Harvey says, bring on the water. Let's go. Let's get to the point. So yeah, I think this is a 3.5 star show. I don't think I'll ever watch any season of Stranger Things again, but when I am watching it, I really do enjoy it. And I think it's something great it's seasons, especially seasons 3 and 4 are my favorite. I was not a huge fan of season 2. I almost completely forgot it, but seasons 3 and 4 are very good. And if you're not a Stranger Things fan, consider this an endorsement to say, yeah, go ahead and watch it. I don't think it's rewatchable that much, but go ahead and watch it. It's a very enjoyable show. Now, I know all the Stranger Things fans are going to come for me and be like, what are you talking about? It's absolutely rewatchable, all that. And I apologize in advance. I'm not trying to step on no toes, but yeah, check it out. And with that, Leaving the Theater is a production of Oh It's Big Ron Studios. Thomas Tyra of Bias Studios mixes the show. Thank you, Tom. Show art from Katie Helm. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. To find out more about Stranger Things, check out our show notes for details. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at OHitsBigRon, at OHITSBIGRON. You can find out more about this show and other Oh It's Big Ron Studios shows by following us on Instagram at Oh It's Big Ron Studios and on Twitter at Oh It's Big Ron Stew, STEW. Leaving the Theater will be back soon, but until then, I'll be here on the couch.